Ferrari started the 2025 season with high expectations, but the reality was a total disaster. How is it possible that a team that was fighting for the title is now struggling to get into the points? Today we analyze Ferrari's poor start in Australia and China, the mistakes that have cost them dearly, and whether there is any hope of recovery. Are we facing another disappointing season for the Scuderia? Stay until the end because the data is shocking. Ferrari arrived at the Australian Grand Prix with high expectations, but what seemed like a promising weekend quickly turned into a nightmare. During free practice, the SF-25 showed impressive pace, with Ferrari dominating the timesheets. The Italian team seemed to be in contention for pole position and the win, but as the weekend progressed, the situation changed drastically. In qualifying, both Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton faced significant problems. The first surprise came with the Q3 times, where both drivers failed to optimize their laps and missed out on the front row of the grid. This was due to several factors. First, the difficulty of getting the tires to optimal temperature. Ferrari had opted for a configuration with more downforce, which, although in theory should have given them more stability, resulted in a much slower car on the straights. Compared to its direct rivals, Ferrari was 5 to 6 km per hour slower on the straights, a significant difference that translated into a much lower than expected classification. But the story didn't end there. During the race, the SF-25's performance continued to decline. Although the team remained competitive in the opening laps, new problems soon arose. The lack of stability in the slower corners, especially in the final sector of the track, caused Ferrari to lose ground to McLaren, which showed a much stronger performance. This lack of consistency was one of the team's most worrying points, as the car didn't seem capable of maintaining its pace throughout the race. The biggest issue, however, was tire management. The increased downforce Ferrari had installed on the SF-25, designed to improve the car's stability, had the opposite effect. This resulted in increased tire wear, forcing drivers to make unnecessary pit stops, losing even more track positions. The combination of an unsuccessful strategy, along with balance and tire issues, meant Ferrari finished much lower than expected, with Leclerc in 8th and Hamilton in 10th. This performance in Australia highlighted a number of problems Ferrari hadn't anticipated. While the team appeared to have a competitive car in the early sessions, the lack of consistency, difficulties with setup, and technical issues revealed that the SF-25 still had serious shortcomings. And what's most worrying is that, unlike other teams like McLaren, which managed to improve significantly during the preseason, Ferrari showed no obvious improvement in its performance. The question that arises is whether this poor start was just an anomaly or if there are deeper problems with the SF-25's design. The first races of the 2025 season are crucial, and if Ferrari doesn't find quick solutions, it could irrevocably lose ground to its direct competitors in the championship. The SF-25, the single-seater with which Ferrari seeks to challenge the Formula One giants in 2025, has been a mixed bag of promise and disappointment. Although Ferrari introduced significant changes to its car's design, these have not yielded the expected results in the first races of the season. To better understand the SF-25's problems, it's necessary to break down the most critical aspects of its design and the challenges Ferrari currently faces. One of the most notable changes to the SF-25 was the adoption of a new front suspension, moving from a pushrod to a pull rod system. This modification was intended to optimize airflow around the car and allow more room for aerodynamic development as the season progressed. However, this change has had unexpected consequences, particularly in how the car responds to variations in balance and setup. The SF-25 has proven extremely sensitive to setup adjustments, something that not only affects its performance in each test session but has also made the car unpredictable during races. Unlike other teams such as McLaren, which achieved substantial improvements during the winter break, Ferrari has fallen behind. Data shows that even if Ferrari had optimized its qualifying performance, it would only have gained around 0.6 of a second over the SF-24, which is not enough to counter the advance of its direct rivals. The SF-25's lack of consistency has also been reflected in its tire management. During free practice and qualifying in Australia, the team struggled to find the right balance. Although Ferrari had a car with high downforce, which in theory should have given them greater stability, the SF-25 proved very difficult to handle. The drivers experienced a combination of understeer on corner entry and oversteer on exit, which prevented them from maintaining a consistent pace. This behavior resulted in increased tire wear, which impacted the team's ability to manage pit stops efficiently. Another crucial issue affecting the SF-25 is its lack of adaptability to different track conditions. Ferrari's decision to employ a more conservative setup to avoid bottom wear was an attempt to prevent similar issues to those they suffered in 2023. However, this car height adjustment resulted in even more unpredictable behavior. On uneven tracks, such as the Albert Park circuit in Australia, even small changes to the car's height appeared to have a significant impact on overall performance. This has made it clear that the SF-25 lacks the flexibility to adapt to different types of circuits. Ferrari's biggest challenge right now is not only understanding why the SF-25 is so sensitive, but also whether the car is facing a deeper design flaw. While the team has made significant efforts to improve performance with new modifications, the lack of consistent progress suggests that the SF-25 may not be fully optimized to meet the demands of the season. This uncertainty is leaving the Maranello engineers facing a double challenge. Not only do they have to understand how to improve the car, but they must also do so in an environment where competitors have already shown significant progress. Ferrari faces a critical dilemma. If the SF-25 remains so sensitive to setup variations and fails to effectively adapt to track conditions, its ability to fight for the championship could be severely compromised. With the start of the 2025 season already underway, the team must make quick decisions about whether to continue developing the SF-25 or rethink its approach to ensure a solid foundation for the future. If a viable solution isn't found, Ferrari could fall behind in the title fight against teams like McLaren and Red Bull, which already appear to have a much more stable and competitive pace. After the disappointing result at the Australian Grand Prix, Ferrari heads into the Chinese Grand Prix hoping to make up for lost ground and correct the mistakes it made. Despite the difficulties experienced in Melbourne, the Scuderia still has a chance to redeem itself, but the margin for error is extremely limited. The question now is whether the SF-25's issues in Australia were simply an anomaly or indicative of deeper design flaws that could continue to plague the team throughout the season. The Shanghai circuit is very different from Albert Park, which could work in Ferrari's favor. While Melbourne features an uneven and aggressive layout with tricky curbs, the Chinese track is smoother and presents fewer surface challenges. This could allow the SF-25, which has already shown good capability in softer track conditions, to adapt better. However, the car's performance in Australia wasn't solely a result of the circuit's characteristics. It was also marked by fundamental issues in tire balance and management, meaning that adapting to the Shanghai layout doesn't automatically guarantee improvement. One positive aspect Ferrari can look forward to is the relatively warmer weather in China, which could benefit tire temperatures. During the Australian Grand Prix, the team struggled to warm up its tires in colder and wetter conditions. This led to a loss of performance in qualifying and inefficient pit stop management during the race. With higher temperatures in Shanghai, Ferrari could be in a better position to optimize its tire performance and avoid some of the issues seen at the first race of the year. Despite the hope for improved performance, Ferrari must address several technical issues that remain unresolved. The car remains extremely sensitive to setup variations, meaning any small adjustment can have a major impact on its performance. If Ferrari fails to achieve greater stability in the SF-25 setup, particularly regarding the front suspension and tire behavior, the potential for improvement in China will be limited. The Maranello engineers will have to be meticulous in their adjustments to avoid making the same mistakes that hurt them in Australia. On the other hand, Ferrari is under pressure to prove that the poor result in Australia was just a stumble and not a sign that the SF-25 is hopelessly behind its competitors. With McLaren and Red Bull leading the field, Ferrari can't afford another bad weekend. The lost time margin is valuable and difficult to recover, especially if the problems persist for several races. Although Leclerc and Hamilton have expressed confidence in the car, there is an implicit recognition that the team must make quick adjustments if it doesn't want to see its rivals take an unsustainable lead. Leclerc, despite the obvious frustration in Australia, has made it clear that the team is motivated to improve and has urged patience. If Ferrari manages to correct its inconsistencies in China, it can regain some of its reputation and put its drivers in a competitive position for the rest of the season. However, the key will be finding a solution to the car's balance and sensitivity issues, two factors that could determine whether the SF-25 is capable of competing at the level of the top cars on the grid. The Chinese Grand Prix will therefore be a crucial test for Ferrari. If they manage to put the lessons learned in Australia into practice and achieve a solid performance, they could make up ground in the championship fight. But if the problems persist, Ferrari could be stuck in a series of mediocre results that would push them further away from the front of the grid. With regulatory changes looming for 2026, Ferrari must also consider how committed it is to developing this car, knowing that priorities for the future could soon change. In short, China represents a critical opportunity for Ferrari. A solid weekend could revitalize their aspirations for 2025, while another disappointing result could effectively put them out of the championship race. Ferrari faces a critical moment in its 2025 season. After a frustrating start to the year, the Scuderia has a chance to redeem itself in China. However, the reality is that the technical issues and lack of consistency in the SF-25's performance are not easy to fix. The team needs to make significant adjustments quickly if it wants to remain competitive in the championship. The Chinese Grand Prix will not only test its ability to adapt to different circuits, but also its resilience in the face of a difficult start to the season. The battle for the 2025 title is far from a one-man showdown. McLaren and Red Bull have already shown they have the resources and stability to dominate the field, but Ferrari still has time to correct its course. However, the upcoming races could mean the difference between being in the fight or being relegated to mediocrity in the pack. The key will be how Ferrari manages the technical adjustments, optimizes the SF-25 setup, and maximizes the performance of its drivers. This moment will be crucial in assessing Ferrari's future in 2025. If the team manages to correct its mistakes and show the speed expected of them, they could be back in the title fight. But if they fail to resolve their issues, they could find themselves overtaken by the competition much more quickly than they had anticipated. Now it's your turn to weigh in. Do you think Ferrari can overcome its problems and fight for the championship this year? Or is the 2025 season already lost for the Scuderia? Leave us your opinion in the comments, as we want to know your perspective on the challenges Ferrari faces and how you think it should react to this poor start. If you enjoyed this analysis and want to stay up to date with the latest Formula One news and strategies, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. With each race, new challenges arise and we'll tell you all about them here. Also, in our next video, we'll analyze the strategies of Ferrari's rival teams such as McLaren and Red Bull to see how they're preparing for the next phase of the season. See you in the next video.